Hello, everybody. Okay, this is day 75 of 365 days of my raw suspending disbelief journey. It is July 6th, 2024. And my goodness, my mind is blown. I did the math before I went live with this recording, and I have now hit the 20% milestone. This episode is the 20% milestone through the year. That's absolutely incredible. We're on the fourth, quote unquote season. So I started this partway through April. So there's been May, June, now we're in July. And there was also part of April. So I made it so that every month is its own season, just so that I could sort of have some sort of structure to it. And of course, it was just so perfect. I randomly was like, oh, what percentage am I at? And I did the math and I was like, this is the episode. This is day 75. This is 20%. 20%. That's a huge marker. That is 1/5 of the way through the year. So, today has been a little bit of an up and down. So I yesterday had intended, it being Friday, I had rescheduled, or not rescheduled, but extended the time for the ladies that were in the Activate event so that I could help them to complete their maps. Just because some of them still needed to get me more information for me to be able to do their maps up for them. And with the live training that I did with the Butterfly Network, and then finding out that I had this chaos energy attached to me, I spent a good chunk of time yesterday clearing out this chaos and restructuring things and getting a plan in place so that things were smooth again and I could clear out that chaos energy and release it. It is not mine to have, all of that. So, and I actually went out and bought some sweetgrass for clearing the energy and for calling in some good energy and all of that. And I have not yet tried sweetgrass, tried using sweetgrass. And it's so funny because I didn't even realize until today, I actually had 4 sweetgrass braids already that I had gotten at a powwow and like land opening event that I had been at previously. So I had these and I didn't even realize what they really were. That they were like a smudge stick almost, these sweetgrass braids. And don't ask me why. I knew what sweetgrass was. I don't know why I didn't put 2 and 2 together, that's what we received as like a thing that they were handing out to people while we were there. So I had not figured it out. I had not figured it out. And even when I went to the store and bought some in a braid, I did not remember that I had 4 of them sitting at home. So that was an unnecessary buy. Oh well. It is probably my new favorite. I really liked the energy of it. I really liked the smell of it a lot better than sage. I don't love the smell of sage, although I do love how powerful and cleansing it is. So anyways, I got this sweetgrass. I did all the clearing, like did a ton of clearing. So then this morning when I woke up, I was just like feeling that kind of like an energy drain. Like I was just like, oh, like that took a lot out of me yesterday. And I was like, you know what? It's been a couple of days. Like I'm bumming around at home, right? So it's been a couple of days. I haven't had a shower. Like I have not had a salt bath or anything for a couple of days, and I'm just going to do that. I know that having a salt shower and a salt bath just every time is like it's like a zing for my energy. It just feels amazing. And I yeah, so I wanted to do that. And then also because I had done all of that clearing energy the day before, I was like, wanted to sort of wash off anything left over and clear that away and whatnot. So this is probably TMI, but I almost took that entire shower to the point where I used up all the hot water blowing my nose. Like it just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. And I felt the need to have it be a really hot shower, and I don't usually take really hot showers, but it was like it was just loosening up all of the stuff that had been built up over the last couple of weeks of being sick. Um, and that it was, even though I had cleared that chaos energy, the physical symptoms in my body of this illness were still stuck. So when I was breathing, you guys, it was literally like I could hear that like bubbly sound as I was breathing. It was like crackly and bubbly sounding. And like that's just how much it had really gotten into my lungs. So I literally, like, the entire shower was just blowing my nose, blowing my nose, blowing my nose, blowing my nose, just all of it coming out. It was so gross. Um and yet amazing, because today I have not been breathing like a very sick old person in the hospital. That is exactly what it reminded me, like, was just like that really gurgly, icky sounding breathing. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Like, that sound is something that I associate with someone who's in the hospital, very, very sick. So that's how much it had really affected me. I still have a little bit of like the throat tickle because I've been coughing so hard and whatnot for like a week and a half. So I feel like it's just my body's catching up to the releasing of that energy, but I feel so much better, and um, definitely felt that alignment of the realization that my client had yesterday of, Coach Bree, you've got some chaos attached to you. Like, it made so much sense. It was so perfect. Once I had done all that clearing yesterday, I actually got a huge chunk done on my taxes, which I have been fighting against hard. So it just showed me like, okay, now I have the control back over myself again. Like, I really had felt that lack of control. So, um, that was incredible. Cleared all of that energy. And then today was very, I had a lot of voice notes to send yesterday that then I was following up on today. I was just sort of catching up on laundry, catching up on dishes, because I did a whole bunch of that at the beginning of the week, but then of course it's just been me here, so I'm not making a ton of dishes, I'm not making a ton of laundry, but just doing a load of each and moving things through and sort of just resetting my energy today, and had the realization. So as I was actually cleaning the kitchen, I was listening to another podcast, which I am ever since this whole suspending disbelief thing started. So I had the original episode of the Manifestation Babe podcast, which I had linked in episode 1 of this podcast. Like, go to the show notes there if you want to hear that. That was like the first podcast episode I had listened to in almost 2 years, because my brain had been on such overload for so long. And since then, though, I am back listening to podcasts. I am like, I love podcasts. I missed podcasts. They're really my jam. I love to clean. As crazy as that sounds, and especially for me, I never used to love to clean. But now that it brings me this sense of like peace and control and safety and all of these things in my life, because I've created my life that way, because I decluttered my life, because I have figured out the associations between everything with everything else, so that I realize that the spaces around me and how I maintain my house and all of that affect my energy, which then affects my business, which affects my success, and on and on and on. Um, I've really come to a point where I enjoy cleaning, and that's so funny, but I do. So, but when I clean, and for the last couple of years especially, I found myself getting behind on cleaning and not being as excited about cleaning and all of that kind of stuff. And when I'm cleaning, a lot of the time it's like I get to a point where I have burned myself out of doing everything else but cleaning. And then I'm like, my house is a disaster and I'm going to clean my house. And that has not been how I've been running my life up until this last couple of years. And so I, having left my husband, my systems, my structures kind of all went out the window, right? And I've brought them back and then had them sort of slip away and then brought them back and had them sort of slip away. And I hadn't found like a perfect one for being on my own yet. And part of it, I think, had to do with the fact that I wasn't listening to podcasts. So I love, like, really love listening to podcasts or audiobooks or whatever while I'm cleaning, while I'm folding laundry, while I'm doing dishes, whatever. Like, that is just, it's my time to like zone inwards and not have to listen to, the petty squabbles between my kids or the whining, the dog just like whines all the time type of a thing. Not all the time, but sometimes he's just randomly whining for no reason and we can't figure it out and he's whining. Like, it just, I get to shut them out. I could still hear if someone's screaming, if someone's dying, right? But I sort of just shut out the world, clean and listen. And it's one of my favorite ways to grow. It's one of my favorite ways to learn new things. It's one of my favorite ways to expand my mind. And of course, I said he whines all the time, so now he's whining. Um, but yeah, as soon as today I was listening while I was cleaning, and I was just like, I'm back in my zone, and it just felt so good. And I was like, this is it. This is it for me, right? This is the really great feeling for me. This is what feels right. And anyway, so I was listening to this episode of a show I have not ever listened to before, but it's one that I had saved. So I must have like, seen a post on Facebook or whatever, somebody sharing their podcast that I thought sounded interesting. And I followed the show just so that I wouldn't forget it completely and figured sometime I'll listen to that. And always, like, when I listen to podcasts, I always scroll through all my shows and I'm just like, what do I feel like today? Right? Like, I don't really binge like one show. I sort of just listen to a whole bunch of different ones and whatever I'm in the mood for that day, whatever I'm pulled to that day. So today I was really pulled to this one that I had never listened to before. I cannot remember the exact name of it, but um, is about feng shui, which I have always been sort of curious about, but don't know much about. Right. And, um, so I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to listen to that and feel into that. And it was so funny because I'm like, one of the first tips that she gave in the episode was to declutter. And I, at that point, had like these little seeds of pieces of ideas stewing in my brain based on what I'd been listening to and whatever. And she said declutter. And I was just like, pause, hold the boat. And I started thinking, and it was not even related to the episode. So like, I'm not even going to link the episode because it was not actually to do with what she was talking about. It's just sometimes how our brains work, right? Where one thing sparks another thought and whatever. So what I realized was that I was, um, first off, I realized was feeling this stuck feeling with my simplified declutter challenge because I had gotten so behind on it. And when I get behind on something, I have that typical ADHD, like, and sort of like an everybody thing, right? Where it becomes this mountain in our minds and it's really hard to, um, feel like we can handle it, like we can take it on and get it done and whatever. So, uh, one thing that it really brought to my attention was the fact that, well, first of all, I had stopped recording episodes for the Suspending Disbelief podcast because I was coughing so much because my throat was so bad. And the more I talked, the more I coughed. And so I was just like, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not going to punish myself like that. It can wait a few days. I'm going to let it get better. And of course, it wasn't getting better. And so, um, in Monday's episode for July 1st or day 70, I even said I'm recording this on July 6th, which is today. Like, actually today. I recorded the entire week today because my voice is getting better. Yes, there's a little bit of coughing in there, but it's not as much as it has been. And the problem was that I was starting to feel that overwhelm of like, oh my gosh, I have 6 episodes to record. I'm behind. I'm never going to catch up. Right. And I don't actually have thoughts of I'm never going to catch up, but it's the feeling of I'm never going to catch up. It's that feeling of a little bit of overwhelm. Right. And So, and then the secondary thought that I had was that feeling of I'm never going to catch up with the Suspending Disbelief podcast was the same feeling I was feeling with the Simplify Declutter Challenge. And it was the same feeling I was feeling around my Heartbeats Harbor podcast. And I was like, damn, Brianna, like you are letting all of these things pile up and they're becoming monumental, even though you know that they're not really that monumental, but they feel monumental, right? So I had the Heartbeats Harbor podcast, I actually finished. Well, I didn't even finish the last season because I had some things happen. So I ended up unofficially ending the season on November 22nd of 2023. And today is July 6th of 2024. So I'm like, it has been a solid 7 months, a little over 7 months, and I have not done this thing, right? I have not started season 2 of that. And I have thought about it and thought about it. And I've planned out the whole season once or twice, but I just was like, I don't know what I want my focus to be. I've got so many topics that I talk about, and I really wanted to have like a clear focus for it, and all of these things. And with the Heartbeats Harbor podcast specifically, I did it a very different way than I've been doing this podcast. So, the Heartbeats Harbor podcast, I did all of the audio editing for it, and I was really, really consistent with that. And I was putting in a lot of time into editing those episodes. And because of the phase of life that I'm in right now, which I think I talked about it in yesterday's episode, and almost cried because I was like, it's just a lot, right? I just didn't have it in me to be editing podcast episodes. And that's why this podcast, the Suspending Disbelief podcast, has been working for me because I don't have to edit the episodes. They're just raw. I just post them and away we go. Right. And I was putting that expectation on myself for the Heartbeats Harbor podcast that I would be editing them and doing it the same way I had done season 1. And so I had just not started it. Because I didn't, it's not great to put out podcasts just whenever. You want to have them on a consistent schedule, no matter what that schedule is, as far as like algorithms go for podcasts. I do know that much. So I didn't want to start and then stop and then start and then stop. So I just didn't start. And I just like had this, and it wasn't even necessarily that I was being a perfectionist with it, but I had done it in that more perfectionisty way for season 1. And so I had this idea in my head that I had to keep going like that in season 2. So anyway, I had this realization listening to this podcast. And it was nothing about getting overwhelmed, but I had the realization that that's why I hadn't been doing the declutter stuff. And then that's why I hadn't been doing these episodes. And then that's why I hadn't been doing the Heartbeats Harbor episodes. And I was just like, enough. I am going to catch this stuff up. And so I turned off the episode that I was listening to. I still am not done it. I turned on the recording and I recorded an episode for Heartbeats Harbor. And I did not hook up my microphone, and I did not go into my office and be in my I have all of the foam on the walls to like deaden the sound, the echoey sounds and all of that stuff. And I was like, nope. Next season of Heartbeats Harbor is not going to be an edited, perfectly curated, whatever podcast. It is going to also be raw, similar to what I'm doing with the Suspending Disbelief Challenge. I will add in my intro and outro and things like that, but I'm not going to edit the sound for it. I am just going to do it. And I was so stuck on, okay, what am I going to be talking about in this season? Like, what's my focus? And I decided to say, screw that too. I talk about a lot of different things. I have a lot of different offers in my business. I have a lot of different topics that I'm passionate about. I am just going to talk about what comes up that I feel like responding to, because my human design is to respond. And when I respond, the things that I say and the things that I think about and the things that I do are very, very powerful. So therefore, instead of me making a big old plan and following it to the T and doing all of the editing and making it this massive task for myself, I just recorded it. And I just said, screw it, I'm doing this. So I recorded the first episode. I will record a couple ahead of time before I move forward with relaunching season 2, just so that I know that I have a couple in place, so that I'm not, because if you don't do that, you end up with like, you're struggling to get them out on time and all of these kinds of things. And I don't want to do that to myself again. So I will record a couple, I will prep those, and then but I'm not going to put a lot of editing time into them. So I'm super excited about that. It's been killing me to not be running my Heartbeats Harbor podcast because I love it. I love podcasting. I love speaking. I love using my voice, and I am not waiting anymore. So I did that, and then I recorded all 6 episodes for this week that I was behind on. And now all I have to do is go and do my Simplify Declutter Challenge content. And now that I decided to just not be overwhelmed and get it done, I know that I'll get through that in no time flat. So I'm on fire. I'm excited. Um, very, very like feeling much more inspired again, feeling much more aligned. Everything just feels like, okay, my structure's back in place. I know what's going on. I know what I'm going to do. Everything feels like, yes, 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 yes. Everything is good. I know where I'm at. And while, yes, I was exactly where I was supposed to be, even when I was feeling scattered, now I feel even more so that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I feel more in alignment. I feel better. I feel happier. And I'm choosing to feel what I want to create. So I'm being more intentional, right? And that is the whole point here. So, uh, one thing that I wanted to talk about, which this episode is a little bit longer again because I just did like a bunch of super short ones, and so, and then I had like this realization today that I wanted to share in today's episode, but I also wanted to share a little bit that I've been very up and down the last little while as far as suspending disbelief about finances. Um, I've, I've realized that having been in basically fight or flight for my finances for so long has got me at a point where I stopped being aware of them. I stopped being intentional, right? About them. I stopped um knowing where I was at. So when I would receive payments, it was just like they went to the first thing that came to my mind. It was not planned out. I did not, and not being intentional when it comes to your finances is so detrimental, right? Like it just really backfires. And even with the great wins that I've had come in, I have shot myself in the foot, right? I've been like, it feels like abundance and, like all of these things. And so then I'm like, yay, I can pay everything. And then it's just like, oh man, it's gone. And not gone, but like it just, a lot of it going very quickly kind of thing. And then realizing like, oops, I didn't plan ahead. And there's things that I should have probably paid instead of those things, or, situations like that. So I've had a little bit of this up and down lately where I'm like, it's part of it is being frustrated with myself, being like, you know better than this, Brianna. But I do, but I don't. Like I do because I knew how to manage finances before. It's not like I've never managed finances before. But I've also been in this state of extreme lack and like basically in fight or flight or freeze as far as finances go now for a couple of years. And so really trying to give myself some grace around that. I made like mostly good choices. They weren't awful, right? I wasn't just like spending it all and blowing it all and whatever, but realizing that I need to be more intentional in this area of my life again as well, and really get on top of things, get on top of my taxes, get on top of my budget, get on top of all of these things so that when I have abundance coming in, it's going to the right places and supporting me in living my best life and in achieving the things that I'm suspending disbelief about, all of the things I'm calling in, all of my manifestations. So, um, yeah, having a little bit of like a back and forth. It's a little bit of like a tug of war with my energy of like, oh, Brianna, you screwed up again. And a little bit of like, nope, we've got this. We can do this. And that chaos is now gone, and I can get a control. I can get control over my life, and I can get the structure back in place, and things are going to be fine. And I'm suspending disbelief about that. So, um, yeah, feeling really good and really hopeful right now. And also celebrating, I haven't really mentioned it. Kelly was she's doing blog posts, and those are a lot more, honestly, those are a lot more effort to write a blog post and spell check and all of the things and get it up is a lot more effort than doing a raw verbal, like verbal diarrhea podcast. Like it really is. It's a lot more effort. So I love that she followed what she's passionate about when it comes to writing. I love to write also, but this was just something that I knew like I could handle a daily podcast if I did it raw like this, where I knew I would never follow through. I barely even ever share about this podcast online, right? Like I don't write posts about it. I don't anything because it's just a lot. But Kelly had committed to a daily blog post and then sort of had the realization like this is a lot to maintain for 365 days to do a daily blog post. So she shifted into doing actually, so for a while she sort of fell off. Not necessarily completely falling off, suspending disbelief, but she fell off of reflecting on it, right? And Kelly, when you're listening to this, I'm not throwing you under the bus. I'm celebrating you, just so you know. Um, I'm really celebrating because she came back from that, right? So often it is, and it's the same feelings of what I had the realizations of today, where it was like, I got 6 days behind on Suspending Disbelief podcast. It's been 7 months since I did my Heartbeats Harbor podcast. I'm 3 weeks behind on my Simplify Declutter challenge. Like all of these things were becoming mountains in my mind. And so I know that when she got behind on blog posts, that became a mountain in her mind. And it stayed behind for a while. And then she had the realization of that was happening. And she and I had the conversation where I was able to, if you are reading her blog post, you'll see her talk about it. She talks about how I made her, like, helped her to realize that she could just summarize and catch up in a shorter form instead of having to do one for every single day to catch up, because it was actually an impossible task at that point, because it was such a big, writing a full blog post every day is already huge, but to catch up on, like, it was like, I can't remember when she had the realization how many days she was at. I want to say a month. But like a month's worth of daily blog posts, that's like the kind of thing you never catch up on, right? Especially when you have kids, and she does have a kid at home. So, and it's summer vacation and all of these things. So she had been putting it off. She had that realization, and she has now started to summarize and catch up back to where she would be right now. And I'm just super, super proud of her, because knowing how hard it is once we get these monumental, like, mountain tasks growing in our heads, how hard it is to come back on board. I'm just super proud of her for not giving up on this journey, right? This is a 365-day commitment is big. It's really big. And it has become a way of life at the same time as when I have let it slip, it becomes a bigger task. And so really going to try to maintain the daily again. And I believe, I could be wrong, she may occasionally do daily ones, but I believe Kelly will now be doing like a weekly or a bi-weekly summary post, which is a lot more doable and maintainable. And I'm just so celebrating her for that. So, lesson for all of us is to do it messy. And I talked about this in the first episode of season 2 of the Heartbeats Harbor podcast, which is going to be coming out soon, because now I'm recording those again. Do it messy, stop waiting, let it be the mess. Right. And that is, one of the biggest things that I have learned from this challenge altogether. And I know this episode is getting a little bit long, you guys, but one of the biggest takeaways I've had so far in the first 20% of the Suspending Disbelief challenge is that doing it messy is actually more powerful and has such a bigger impact in the world than trying to be perfect. And not that, my Heartbeats Harbor podcast episodes weren't impactful. They were. People loved them. It was great. But this one has really taken off in a whole other way. And it's because of the rawness, right? It's because of the authenticity and the realization of just like, life is messy and it's okay that it's messy, and we're all like this. And, I have no problem sharing vulnerably. I don't have a problem with that at all. But a lot of people aren't used to hearing it. right? They're not used to listening to someone be really vulnerable. And so I think that that's why this one has taken off so much, why it sort of became a movement, took on a life of its own, is just because of the vulnerability aspect of it. And so when we decide that we're not going to hold ourselves to these perfectionist standards anymore and we just do it raw and we do it messy, it really does create a bigger impact. It really is more powerful and more impactful. And I'm going to be applying that going forward across the board. Just in everything. I'm really going to keep that front of mind for myself. Um, I recovering perfectionist here, just like I know many of you are, and it can be difficult to do. But when we let ourselves just be ourselves and show up authentically and vulnerably, we make a bigger impact in the world. And so I will do that. I will do that for blog posts. I will do that for podcast episodes. I will do a non-edited sound on my Heartbeats Harbor podcast. I'm so proud of Kelly for doing it messy to get to catch up. For Jess, I know she's still plugging away with her Telegram um, voice notes, and she's had a couple of times where she missed a couple of days and then does a catch up. And that's like, it's perfect, right? It's all perfect. And I love it. I love it so much. Um, so yeah, I think that that's about all for today, but I hope that through listening to this podcast and reading Kelly's posts and listening to Jess's Telegram messages and all of that, that you are feeling hope. I really hope that it is bringing hope, because the way that the world is, when we want to look at it straight on, life can be really hard, right? Looking at it and facing it and all of the problems that come up and all of that. I know that I talk about a lot of the problems, but I hope that it is in an empowering way and not a disempowering way. I hope that it helps you to realize that there is hope and that we can still have success despite all of the hardships, and that we can still have the joy with the pain. And there's the duality aspect that I always speak to, right? Of, yeah, there's these hard things, but man, is there some really good stuff with it. And I hope that witnessing, by hearing my stories of all of the things that get thrown my way, and that I still keep going, I hope that it inspires you to keep going as well. I hope that you are doing the Suspending Disbelief Challenge with us. If you are, we love to hear about it. And just remember that Kelly and I are still do have the Suspending Disbelief pod open, that you can sign up with us to have 2 coaches working with you, helping you, support you in your mindset and in suspending disbelief for whatever it is that you are manifesting in your 365-day challenge, if you're doing this too. So I'll drop the link for that in the show notes as well. But just sending everybody so much love, and really, really hoping and praying that this is helping to inspire and uplift you in your life. Because that is absolutely my intention behind it. When I'm sharing this, originally it was just to record it for myself almost, and then now it has become a thing where I'm really hoping that me sharing is creating that hope for you and impact in your life. So that is what I have for you guys today, and I'm sending you so much love, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.